How can you truly help your children prosper and thrive in life? It sounds simple, but it might be the hardest question in personal finance, because at a certain point, it's not just about how much you give, but about how you give it. We've all seen what can happen when this goes wrong. Kids handed too much too soon who lose their drive. Or perhaps parents who never share anything at all but leave behind confusion, resentment, and missed opportunities. Having spent over 2 decades advising successful families, I've seen both sides of this, and I've helped many find a better path. So in this video today, I'm going to share 7 practical steps to help you pass on your values, not just your assets, and how to create a life strategy that sets your children up for real, lasting, lifelong success. So let me start by telling you a story. Back in the 1960s, a young man named Stuart Mott graduated from college and was handed a $6 million check from his dear old dad, one of the original founders of General Motors. Not bad, but that wasn't all. He also received an $850,000 allowance per year from the family trust. Now, with that kind of runway back then, Mott lived a life full of eccentric hobbies rather than ever needing to have a career. He researched psychic powers, he raised chickens in a Manhattan penthouse, and floated around in a Chinese junk boat on the Hudson River. He even brought live elephants and donkeys to parties just for all of the theatre of it. You might say there's nothing wrong with any of that, he's just having fun. But the question really is, was that a life of freedom or just a life without purpose? Warren Buffett, who's handed out a few dollars himself, famously said, "I want to leave my kids enough so that they can do anything, but not so much that they can do nothing." Now that sounds nice, but how exactly do you do just that? Because here's the reality. This conundrum isn't just about the money. It's not just about tax, and it isn't just about parenting. It's all of it, all tangled up in one giant, high stakes, complicated knot. Once you get past a certain amount of money in life, and that number is often far lower than many people think, the biggest challenge isn't growing it anymore. It actually becomes passing it on. After all, there are actually limited things that you can do with money once you have enough. If you don't want to give it all to the taxman, you can either work less by retiring earlier, or you have to spend more, or you give it away. And if you have enough to give it away, then it's the choice between your loved ones or charitable causes. If it's your kids or loved ones, then the next choice is whether you're going to give with a cold hand after you're gone, or with a warm hand whilst you're alive. Some people plan to hand it all over, and some plan to give nothing. Others end up with family feuds, resentment, or dysfunctional children who coast along in life for decades without ever learning to stand on their own 2 feet. So let's walk through 7 steps that could help you figure out what's right for your own family. Step 1. Always start with the end in mind. To start the process, I suggest this. Imagine you had a magic wand and were able to cut through all of the complexity to create the perfect outcome for your own family. What exactly would this look like? Perhaps your children are financially secure but still driven. Maybe they're generous and kind but not wasteful. It could be that they're safe but not vulnerable. What exactly does this picture look like? Now, to better illustrate this question, imagine a spectrum of different parenting approaches. On the one hand, you've got Stuart Mott's father, one of the co-founders of General Motors, who gave all this enormous amount of wealth early on in life. On the other hand, you've got someone like Mick Jagger, who's publicly saying his kids should expect absolutely nothing because the fortune's going to charity. Most families tend to land somewhere in the middle. Maybe you want to pay for education, maybe you want to help with things such as weddings or to buy the first home or grandkids. Perhaps investing in their health and well-being is a priority. Maybe you want to test the waters with their spending habits and mindsets before handing over the keys to the kingdom. The key is starting at this big picture level because the topic is just so complicated. And by doing so, you avoid details that may cause you to see all the obstacles before you find the solutions. Step 2 is defining fairness your own way. If you've got more than one child, ask yourself, does fair mean equal? Because for some families, giving everybody the same amount makes absolute sense, but others see it very differently. For example, what if one child's a partner at a global law firm and another is a teacher at a primary school? What if one lives in central London and the other in Lisbon? What if one child is financially responsible and the other, well, they think a credit card limit is a real challenge? Fair doesn't always have to mean the same. As Thomas Jefferson allegedly said, there is nothing more unequal than the equal treatment of unequal people. And deciding how you define fair is one of the most personal decisions that you'll make. Step 3 is to choose your level of control. Some people want total oversight. They set up irrevocable trusts, appoint trustees, create clauses that say that money can only be used for productive things such as education or buying a home. This is great on paper. It protects the money, it can guide on purpose, and it can save on tax. But let's be honest, it isn't always smooth sailing. Some beneficiaries end up spending their lives begging trustees for basic access, and some trusts become absolute battlegrounds. So yes, this option can offer control, but sometimes at the cost of simplicity, flexibility, and family harmony. These are the kinds of decisions where having expert support can make all of the difference. So if you're navigating this with your own family and want help building a strategy that fits your values and your goals, you can book a free call in the link in the description. Step 4 is not forget philanthropy. Giving to your kids is one thing, but giving beyond your kids is another. If charity is part of your values, make it part of the plan. Some values say anything above the tax-free threshold, give it away. Others carve out specific causes they care deeply about. Either way, it's another way to teach your kids that wealth isn't just something you have, it's something you use. Step 5 is to watch out for particularly emotional assets, a family business, a villa, a chalet, a family home in the countryside. Assets such as these can't be split down the middle without a fight. They carry emotions, memories, and very often drama. So if you've got something like this in your life strategy document, think very hard about how to structure it. You might want to ring fence it for one child or put into a trust or foundation with very clear usage rules. What you don't want is 3 adult siblings arguing over a wine cellar whilst your wealth is slowly drained away by the lawyers. Step 6 is to think carefully about lifetime gifts versus inheritance. When's the right time for you to give whilst you're alive or after you're gone? Giving during your lifetime, a warm hand, as we like to call it, lets you see the positive impact of that giving. You get to help your kids when they probably need it most in their lives, like buying a home, launching a business, or covering the cost of raising their own children. It also gets to give you a sneak preview. How do they handle the money? What are their attitudes towards money? And how do they spend? But this isn't for everyone. Some parents prefer to wait and give with a cold hand. This can avoid potential entitlement, keep relationships much cleaner, avoid tricky conversations, and it also removes that tricky question, how much can I afford to give without compromising my own lifestyle? Step 7 is to talk about it. Now, money can be a very tough topic. We typically learn about it as a maths-based subject at school, but we feel emotional about it. Often we don't talk about it at all, especially family money. But silence enables problems to germinate. And if you've got a plan, it's typically best to share it, explain the reasoning, and let your children ask questions. You don't need to reveal every line item to them, but transparency whilst you're alive can prevent confusion and resentment later. Even Warren Buffett updates his plan every few years and shares it. Yours doesn't need to be perfect, but it does need to exist, and it can evolve over time, just like your own family does. So here's the truth. This isn't a numbers game. This is a values game. The best financial life strategy isn't the one that just saves the most tax or earns the best return. It's the one that protects the people you care deeply about and makes sure they live meaningful, independent lives no matter what. The question isn't just about how much you leave behind. It's about how well you do it. And if you're still unsure, remember this. Better to have an imperfect plan that reflects your personal values than a perfect spreadsheet that ignores them. Wealth is a gift, but without deep thought, it can become a burden to even the most successful families. By imagining your ideal outcome first, defining fairness, embracing or limiting control, weaving in philanthropy, planning for unique assets, deciding when to give, and having honest conversations, you give your family a real chance, not just at comfort, but also at character. But even when you get that balance right, there's still one risk that could quietly undo everything you've built. And in 2025, it's becoming even harder to spot. So watch this video next where I show you exactly what that risk is and how to protect your family from it.